morning, friends. It is finally a nice sunny day outside. Spring is just around the corner, and I have been thinking we've got weeks left to go until Easter, and it's just this Sunday, so I thought I would show you how we can decoupage some fabric over a basket, and I'm calling this more of an adult Easter basket. And that's because I know a lot of times we tend to do things for our children or grandchildren or nieces and nephews, but this one is strictly for us because we can use it right on through the rest of the year for whatever it is you'd like for yourself. And this time we'll be using fabric, but there are a few little tricks you need to know, so I'll tell you how we can do this. Now, I personally wanted something that I could keep magazines in up in the bedroom next to the bed, but I wanted it to match the decor up there. So I went out and I purchased this basket. Now, you can use this as an Easter basket and go with an Easter theme, which is why I'm doing this a few days before Easter. But I wanted to make a few suggestions. You really ideally want to select everything at one time. So let's say I went to a fabric/craft store. I wanted to make sure I had a fabric that did two things. The first thing is I wanted this print to be large enough for me to cut out. You see there are these big, bold flowers and leaves on here? You want to be able to cut that out. And the second thing is you want to make sure that you get a background color for your basket that matches the background color of your napkin as closely as possible. And you want to make sure it matches the background, not any of the colors in between, because it is very hard to get an exact cut on the fabric. And I'll show you what I mean, but first, before we do any of the cutting, we want to paint that basket and put that aside to dry. And I'm using a multi-surface paint here, and the background color, I just happened to find a paint that matched the background color of my fabric identically. These chip brushes are perfect for this. We're working over a woven surface. This brush will get into all of these grooves. And by the way, I use these brushes over and over again. You can get them at the hardware store for about $1 a piece. So they're very sturdy, they last forever. And the first thing you want to do is paint the whole basket and put it aside to dry. And now I'll show you a trick to cutting the fabric. You want to cut out just one section of the fabric first, and then take one of these glue sticks. I like the repositionable ones because they just are a little bit easier to work with. And I just put a little bit on the back of the fabric, and then I put it over a piece of paper. And this is a mailer from, I don't know, one of the stores where I shop. And I took the fabric and flipped it over. And by the way, I'm using this mailer because it's just got a little bit more firmness to it than if you were to use a piece of notebook paper or paper from your copy machine. And I took my regular scissors that I cut paper with, and I just cut the excess paper away first. And then I took very sharp fabric scissors, and you want to cut as closely as you can to the outline of your images. But I will say that because it is fabric, and this is one of the thicker fabrics, because it is fabric, it is really hard to get an exact cut. And I've been cutting decoupage papers and materials for decades. So I know how to do this, and I know what I'm doing, and it's still a bit of a challenge to get right up against the edges. I'm getting a little carried away here. You don't have to get that close to the edge if your background color of the fabric matches your paint. And you might be wondering, why didn't you just get a thinner material? This is a Waverly material, and I got it in that section where they're on those huge long spools that you have to carry over to the desk to have them cut it. It's an upholstery material, which is pretty thick, But those were the ones that have the big, large patterns on them. And especially this one, I found it to just be beautiful. I would not recommend going with fleece or anything of that nature. And I did not wash this. I just brought it home and started to cut. And here's just one piece that I finished. Now you can see there's a little bit of an outline there with the background color. I'm going to pull this away from the magazine that I used to cut it with. And you can see the little bit here that I have along the edges and the outside. So I'm going to cut out 3 different pieces to go around the basket. And before you decoupage, you want to play around with your images first to lay them out the way you think they'll look best on your surface. And you want to make sure you're using a matte decoupage glue. I have found that when using fabric, a lot of times, if you don't use a matte finish, it comes out looking like it's plastic. It's not a very appealing look. Now, once you're happy with the way you have this laid out, you want to take the chip brush again, and you want to just pick up a little section of the fabric and place some decoupage glue down. And again, because we're using the chip brush, you want to make sure you get into these grooves. And it is better to use too much decoupage glue. You don't want it gloppy, but you do want to make sure you use a lot of it. And then again, with the chip brush, make sure the area where these edges are gets placed down very securely, and go over the surface of I keep wanting to say napkin, the surface of the fabric with the chip brush. And a trick that I learned along the way was to take one of these misters, it's got a very fine mist, and spray it over the fabric. Now this causes the fabric to sink even more into the grooves of the basket, which not only makes it look natural, but it will help this to stay secure forever, the way we're doing this. So you can see I'm really pouncing down hard with the brush because I'm focusing on getting the fabric into all of those grooves. So I'm going to go around the rest of the basket and complete this way and let it dry. And as you can imagine, I left this out overnight near the heat vent in order to dry. You know, sometimes I put my decoupage projects in the oven at 175 in order to make that dry faster. Well, this is Mod Podge, which I tend not to use a lot because sometimes it can end up with a plastic look to it. I knew that if I put the Mod Podge in the oven, it would definitely look plastic. So I wanted to let this air dry naturally so that it still just looked like fabric with a matte finish. It does take a long time to dry. Now here we are the following morning, and you can see that you can hardly see any of the background fabric around the images. So I'm very happy with that. But one thing we want to do is add one more coat of decoupage glue over the images. You don't need to go around the whole basket, but you do want to make sure that these edges are down securely. So I'm using a smaller bristle brush, but I'm going against the grain here because I want to make sure if any of these edges are up, the decoupage glue is getting underneath there, and as I go back and forth, it's pressing the edges down. Then I'm going to cover the whole image like this, but I do want to make sure I pay special attention to these edges. Now, I'm going to finish the whole basket this way, and because it's just the surface that we're working over, it's only going to need about an hour to 2 hours to dry completely. And I'm just going to I'm putting it in a room that has the heat on. I'm going to shut the door. It's very dry in there, and this will dry pretty quickly. What I'm going to do then is use a matte top coat. It's really better if you use a product like Liquitex Matte Varnish. There'll be a link below this video to take you over to my website where you can read about the varnish or buy it. You could do either one over there along with some other products. And that way it will look very natural. So I am going to, in the next shot, show you how this looks now that everything's dry and I have the matte varnish over it. Here's how the project looks now that it's all finished, and I was just thinking you could also put a nice potted plant inside of here and give this to someone with Easter flowers inside of it. Or again, you can use it around your house. You can put firewood in here, blankets, towels. You could even put a liner in here and use it as a little trash container. In the meantime, guys, thank you so much for subscribing, for all of your comments. Upcycle with Decoupage is also on Facebook. If you go over and like and follow the page, you'll be notified every week when I put a new video on YouTube or Patreon. Patreon is a paid service where I will be adding some how-to decoupage furniture videos this spring and summer. And if you want to click on the link to go to my website, I added a bunch of brand new napkins that are out on the market, and you want to get there sooner rather than later because they do sell out pretty quickly. And since my website goes through Amazon, you can shop for anything else that you need while you're over there. So I'll leave you with a few images of the springtime around here, guys. Thank you again. I read all of your lovely comments. I can't get back to everyone on YouTube. There are just too many comments, and it's just me here by myself. But I will see you guys next week with another video. Happy Easter, everyone.